Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanurandana Jasodanandana Brajajanurandana Jamuna Tiravanachadi Jamuna Tiravanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivijagacharya Ashtatarasata C. by His Divine Grace Iti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananda Koti Vaishnavadinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi. I'm attempting, Krishna permitting, to complete Canto 3. So it's been a little spotty here and there. So we just finished a chapter 14, and some texts that I didn't complete yet are from chapter 12. So we're going back to chapter 12, starting with text 42, and going on to text 48. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The chapter is titled Creation of the Kumaras and Others. So we're way back at the beginning of Visarga. Visarga means what Brahma does, the sub-creation. Sarga, Visarga, sub-creation. And the previous chapter, very interesting, calculation of time by the atom. I like that topic. We covered the whole chapter. And then beginning in this chapter, so there's already the sun, but, there's lots of details, just like construction. There's people that construct and then people that come in and do the details. Even in artwork, the artists for the ISKCON press at least in those early days, they had an assembly line. Here's how they did it, because I watched them. They received the audio recordings of Prabhupada's commentary on Krishna book, for example. And they all sat around and listened to it. And they're the first ones to hear. They heard it directly. And then they would have a little powwow, brainstorming session. What are some of the paintings that we could, so from the sound came the conception, their creative thought process on what would they want to depict, to illustrate Prabhupada's words. And then they had an assembly line. Bharadraj did the line drawing. Maybe you've seen Leonardo da Vinci's line drawing before he filled it in. So that's how they started. He made the creative, here's what it would look like. And Jadharani filled it in. And then Muralidhar put in the details, all the really refined. Then later they changed their process and they had their own projects. But that's stages. So this is a stage of creation where the universe is up, but it's not running. People that do construction, it's like, I just do the detail work. They put in the fixtures and the baseboards and the stuff. And all the trims and, make it sparkle. That's what they do. That's all they do. If somebody does the other stuff, they come in and do that. So you're at the detail stage. But who's behind it all? Vishnu. Brahma is the instrument. And he's filling up the universe with details. So here's some of the details. Starting with text 42. Then the thread ceremony for the twice-born was inaugurated, as were the rules to be followed for at least 1 year after acceptance of the Vedas, rules for observing complete abstinence from sex life, vocations in terms of Vedic injunctions, various professional duties in household life, and the method of maintaining a livelihood without anyone's cooperation by picking up rejected grains. Now that's an interesting occupation. We'll hear the purport. So Brahma manifested the Vedas, but then he also then has to here's what it looks like. That's another part of creation, manifesting the blueprint and then putting in the details. So, purport. During student life, the brahmacharis were given full instructions about the importance of the human form of life. Thus, the basic education was designed to encourage the student in becoming free from family encumbrances. Only students unable to accept such a vow in life were allowed to go home and marry a suitable wife. Otherwise, the student remained a permanent brahmachari, observing complete abstinence from sex life for his whole life. It all depended on the quality of the student's training. We had the opportunity to meet an avowed brahmachari in the personality of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Goswami Maharaj. Such a great soul is called a Naishtika brahmachari. So there's more things in the detail of the verse. We'll discuss them a little bit. But that training from childhood is a life of abstinence, and so if one enters into household life, then restricted within marriage and for the purpose of procreation, and that is also Krishna. But, the indication from the Vedic paradigm is that's not a necessity. Now, Prabhupada would sometimes say, therefore, animal propensities and their necessities, so they are to be fulfilled in a religious way. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. My experience is, even in dealing with Western people that have, Western values, that if you just stick to the Vedic paradigm, they know not that they're ready to follow it, but they don't go, oh, you people. We had this anecdotal, but we had this discussion in Girinagar. There were two people in that audience, out of half of the audience, 120 people, that had no experience. So one American girl sitting right up front that was really distracted a lot, said, what's your view on, man-woman interaction? Because I've heard, you say bad things about it. That was like, okay, an audience filled with new people. They said, we don't say there's something bad with it. It's God-given. There's male and female, and there's attraction male and female. But everything has a purpose in God's creation. And the male-female attraction, what happens? Let's get together. So, and when they get together, what happens? So that's the God-given purpose. It's continuation of the species. That's the God-given purpose. And so we follow God's given purpose, and not otherwise. We didn't say God. That given purpose. I don't know if I said God. Whatever. There's a purpose in creation for everything. That's the purpose. So that which is according to that standard, it's fine. It's in Bhagavad Gita, it says that's spiritual. And otherwise it's not. And, she didn't look happy. So I said, let's take it a little bit further. What's the purpose? It's not just species are furthered, but the higher consciousness message is, it's a soul, you're inviting a soul to take shelter, and it's the duty of mother and father, not just to enjoy the act, but to take that soul and deliver the soul. So before there's that, during the menstrual cycle of the would-be mother, select the right time, then there's purificatory processes to elevate your consciousness. The Indian persons in the audience, men and women, were going, he knows this stuff. That's interesting. So, Dharbadan Samskara. So, because the consciousness of mother and father at the moment of conception determines the soul that's attracted to take shelter there. And then they have this elevated soul. They have to be an elevated consciousness, and their duty is, that's this higher consciousness purpose. So we like that one. She didn't know what to say. And then the next question is, what about women, male, male? That was the next question. I said, same answer. There's a higher consciousness purpose for everything. And if it's not within the higher consciousness purpose, we leave it to the side. So if somebody's wired this way, that way, they can be wired this way, that way. But not this act of sex, because there's this higher consciousness purpose. And that's our position. Because we follow Bhagavad Gita. Because Bhagavad Gita is taking us to that higher consciousness place. That's what we do. They were silent. So, I did no Rotten Tomatoes. I don't know if everybody was satisfied, but, it didn't continue the dialogue. You people are against, etc. You're not modern. We're interested in higher consciousness, not modern or ancient, old-fashioned. We're interested in higher consciousness. So, the sacred thread ceremony, Savitra, for twice born, that's there. And then accepting the Vedas and following certain rules after following the Vedas. Minimum 1 year, but obviously it continues. This observing complete abstinence from sex life. There's a nice verse Prabhupada would quote often, Canto 6, Chapter 1. Human form of life is meant for tapasa. And the first one, Prabhupada calls it the regular freedom, the regular principles of knowledge. That's what he calls this verse. Tapasya brahmacharjena samena niyamena va tyagena satyasauchabhyam. So these are principles of student life. And student life begins with, as Prabhupada is writing here, training the student of the value of this human form of life. Well, you won't get the value of the human form of life if your attention is simply going to objects of the senses, enjoy the objects of the senses, and that's the value of life, sense gratification. And so in student life, the training is the value of human life and accepting this principle of abstinence from sex. That's the brahmachari. And one of the ways the brahmachari learns, listen to Prabhupada's recorded lectures and you'll find it every time. In this interview with the Associated Press, Prabhupada quoted, Swamiji, what's the symptom of knowledge? And Prabhupada's answer, seeing every woman as mother. What? It's a symptom of knowledge. Matravat paradarishu atmasanyeshu satsvapi. So, seeing everyone equal. So, when the little boy, the student of the teacher, is sent to collect alms, that's the menial servant. There's built into it, there's these two things. Everything that I receive is not mine. It's the property of my guru. And he would say, and the guru, he gives the alms to the guru gives the alms to his wife, the wife prepares a meal. And if the teacher forgets to call the student, he fasts. He doesn't say, hey, rah, 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 rah. Doesn't do that. The training is, it's the property of Guru, and I'm the servant, the humble servant of Guru. What happens, if that training is done nicely, is what happens when he grows up. Now we've got a livelihood. It belongs to Krishna. And then when he goes to the door and he sees a lady, she's my mother. And she's my mother, and she's my mother, and everyone is mother. Now he grows up. She's my mother. Not much. She's an object, a potential object to be exploited by me. The young boy then becomes an adult and understands she's mother. Everyone except one's wife. Then, the Mataji thing drops because everyone else is not an object. The object of the senses out there are for the teacher, and ultimately they're for Krishna. This world in which we live is meant for Krishna's enjoyment. And members of the opposite sex, they our mother, or the women for the boys is mother. And, the culture of respecting mother and father. It's any culture. Any culture. There's non-culture, but any culture. It's respect for mother and father and for elders. Fundamental to Vedic culture. 5, and they're among the 5, elder and parents. So, to be respected. So, the human form of life training is the value of the human form of life. My goodness, how many times would Prabhupada speak about that to his students, to his audiences, not even just students, anybody. Na te vidu svartakatimi Vishnu. They don't know the value of life. So the goal of life, like we spoke yesterday, goal of life, they don't know. So here's the goal of life. The human form of life is, it shouldn't be cats and dogs. Shouldn't be animal. Animal doesn't have the capacity. Human life is the capacity. This is the value. To be detached from this hankering for sense enjoyment as the standard of happiness. That's not what happiness is, and people don't know. And so they suffer. They go to the next and next and next, and lifetime after lifetime, and forever. That's a long time, it's forever. And accepting this miserable condition, thinking it's not so miserable. Or it's so miserable, I can't take it anymore. Narcissism has both sides. Hedonism has both sides. So, rules for observing complete abstinence for sex life, vocations in terms of Vedic injunction, various professional duties in household life. So, Varna and Ashram. And Varna and Ashram starts with character. Character is the value of the human form of life, and then with the human form of life, then these symptoms of higher consciousness. The behaviors that tip of the iceberg thing rest upon values. The human form of life is valuable. Towards what end? Know who I am. But they don't know that. So then comes behaviors. The behaviors rest upon values. And values rest upon deeply held convictions. That's how it works. Even in material society. And also in spiritual. In Canto 1, Chapter 9, that's Bhishma's instructions to Yudhisthira. The first part is Bhishma pacifies Yudhisthira and says, Krishna wanted this. You did what Krishna wanted, don't lament. He wants you to be king. You're the king. Rule and protect the citizens. And it worked. He was ready to accept what Krishna wanted, reminded by grandfather Bhishma. And then he asked, this isn't really the right time to ask you for a Bhagavatam class, you're on the bed of arrows here, but you're an instructor, could you instruct me how to be the ruler of the world? What are my duties and how do I fulfill them as the emperor? So Bhishma Dev outlines this initial training, and the initial training is everyone gets character. And then the teacher that has everyone, their students, they're examining the character, the quality, the psychophysical nature, and some can remain brahmachari and some will move on. But the character doesn't change. When one gets married doesn't mean now I have a license for unrestricted anything. the life of restriction under the codes of the Vedas, because I learned that from my student life. And then there's various varnas, along with various ashrams. And the teacher, competent teacher, can train the student varna-oriented. And if they don't have the qualification, they may send that student to someone who has the qualification. But they do the basic training boot camp. And then depending upon their skill, knowing the psychophysical nature of the child, they or someone can help them with their varna. Various professional duties in household life, and the method of maintaining livelihood without anyone's cooperation by picking up rejected grains. Now that's explained coming up, I believe. Yeah, text 43. So here we go. The 4 divisions of retired life are Vaikanasas, Valakilyas, Audambaras, and Penapas. The 4 divisions of the renounced order of life are, and it's a little different than how Prabhupada recite it, but Kutichak, Bhavodas, Hansas, and Nishkriyas. All these were manifested from Brahma. Purport. The Varnashram Dharma, or the institution of the 4 divisions and orders of social and spiritual life, is not a new invention of the modern age as proposed by less intelligent persons. It is an institution established by Brahma from the beginning of creation. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Chatur Varnamaya Shrishtam. So in the, comes later in the Bhagavatam, but it's one of the ways of living simply. For those who are in the renounced order of life. Their maintenance in this, without going through it because of time. The first stage, they move out of their village and live outside the village. And then the people from the village bring them something. That's their maintenance. The next is they go to the village and they just go door to door, and whoever gives something. Then the Paribrajakacharya, they don't stay by their village, they go all over the place, and they maintain by Madhukari. And then Paramahamsa, they don't even go door to door, just if people bring them something. So in this, under the category of Madhukari, they can go to a door, or they can go to the field where there's grains that have fallen onto the ground, and accept that. Now, maybe a modest amount, but they're, persons of that disposition, they're accustomed to that. I don't need so much. There are persons that aren't accustomed to that. So they're not sannyasis. They have another program. They produce food grains. And those that produce food grains, there may be some surplus. So they may give some surplus to the sannyasi that comes to their door with Madhukari. Or, yeah, sure, you can go to my field and pick up some grains that fell on the ground. No problem. Be my guest. And then, because that's also food for the birds. And the person who is the Krishi, the agriculturalist that produces grains, their mindset already is not greed. Their mindset is, through this activity, I'm maintaining others, the birds and the squirrels and the this and the that, and the sadhus that come and pick up grains in the field. So they don't have to be in an anxiety, oh, some grains fell on the ground. It's just part of their taking care of others. So that's where that idea comes from. Text 44. The science of logical argument Vikshaki. The Vedic goals of life, Trayi, that's Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, that's 4. Dharma, Artha, and salvation, Moksha. The Vedic goals of life, and also law and order, moral codes, the celebrated hymns, Bhuva, and Sva, all became manifested from the mouths of Brahma, and the pranava, Omkar, was manifested from his heart. So he's busy, getting everything ready for the praja, the population that's going to use these things. He's manifesting these things. Here's a little something I learned about Confucius. And it's one of the reasons that in China that the Chinese government likes Confucius. Because he said there are 2 parts of character development. One is an inside cultivation of character and detachment. And then there's this external feature that's, follow the laws of the government, follow the orders of society. It's not a new thing, it's a Vedic thing. Here it is. The Vedic goals of life and also law and order. Danda. Stick. Law and order. There's some slogans in China. One of them is, China is a government of law. Danda. We like Confucius, because Confucius says, follow the law. But the Vedas say, it can be done in an exploitative way, and it can be done the law is for elevation of consciousness. That's what it's for. Not manipulate people. Of course, there's probably a mix somewhere in there for keeping law and order. But that's the purpose. And then, people that get that power and their hearts aren't pure, they can abuse that power. It goes on. Not only in one part of the world, it goes on. But law and order is needed. It's Vedic. You don't whine and complain. If Chaitanya Mahaprabhu upheld it. Thereafter, the art of literary expression, Ushnik, was generated from the hairs on the body of the almighty Prajapati, that's Brahma. The principal Vedic hymn, Gayatri, was generated from the skin. Trishtup, from the flesh. Anushtup, from the veins. And Jagati, from the bones of the Lord of the living entities. It doesn't say what those things are. Jagati is another type of poetic meter. Anushtup, another type of poetic meter. So, the art of writing verse. Pankti became manifest from the bone marrow, and that of Brihati. Another type of verse was generated from the life breath of the Lord of the living entities. Final 2047. Brahma's soul was manifested as the touch alphabets. His body as the vowels, his senses as the syllabant alphabet, his strength as their intermediate alphabets and as sensual activities as the 7 notes of music. So if you want to be Brahma, you have to be really a capable person, and really empowered, because you can't do it otherwise. But he is empowered. Shrishti Shakti. Prabhupada's purport. In Sanskrit, there are 13 vowels and 35 consonants. The vowels are, I can't say them properly, and the consonants are, etc. Among the consonants, the first 25 letters are called the sparshas. There are also 4 antastas. Of the ushmas, there are 3 S's called ta lavya, murdanya, and dantya. The musical notes are da-da-da-da. All these sound vibrations are originally called Shabda Brahma, or spiritual sound. It is said, therefore, that Brahma was created in the Mahakalpa as the incarnation of spiritual sound. The Vedas are spiritual sound, and therefore there is no need of material interpretation for the spiritual vibration of the Vedic literature. The Vedas should be vibrated as they are. Although they are symbolically represented with letters, which are known to us materially, in the ultimate issue there is nothing material, because everything has its origin in the spiritual world. The material manifestation is therefore called illusion in the proper sense of the term for those who are realized souls. Anybody out there realized souls? There's nothing but spirit. Now that's the abeta feature, and then there's the beta feature. Any discussion? Yes. Microphone over here.
When you were speaking about training.
About?
When you were speaking about training children, you were...
Training children.
You were mentioning about, do you feel like the goal of human life?
Yes.
And also yesterday...
The value of human life, specifically Prabhupada saying, yeah.
And yesterday, there was a facilitated question that was asked, what would you like to accomplish?
Yeah, goals, goals, yeah.
So a couple questions tonight. One, we have such lofty goals in our consciousness, things that, we're going to pure Gaudiya,
Okay. So make goals. That, yeah, there was another slide that said make little goals. The baby step one.
So some things are quantifiable. For example, if my goal is to chant purely, I can quantify what time I wake up, how many rounds I chant by a certain hour. But there's the deeper aspect of consciousness. So our goals are, it seems there's this big element of consciousness in everything we do as part of the goal. And that's not quantifiable.
That's okay. That's okay. So let's just, is that the end of your question? How do we match the short term, where we're at and these lofty goals? Yes? Huh? How do you measure where you are? Well, we're half asleep, and half awake, or maybe a little more than half, a little less than half. So it's important. Measuring is have some sense of where I'm at. I know from the Vedas, and I know from reality, But I know that higher goal is there, and I'm way down here. But I have faith that the higher goal is, I have faith in the Vedas. So now, I have to act from where I am. And I want to go in the direction of this higher goal. So what's a doable step? So just, how do I measure, honesty? And, so there's barometers. And it's nice to have exemplary persons to look up to, because they're further along that path of reaching that goal than I am. And I'd like to learn from them. And then there's, the storybook ones, the Prahlad Maharajas and Narada Munis and, Dhruva Maharajas and, so those persons are way up there. But they didn't necessarily start way up there. They started wherever they started from. King Chitraketu, but look what happened. He went back to Godhead. So, how do we measure honesty? This is this introspection. And consciousness, well, it's dim, but the light's on. And I know that I'm not there, and I know I want to get there. I know I could want to get there more than I want to get there. But I know I want to get there. That's how you measure consciousness. We have the standard, and we have intermediate stages. Just like this, from here, this acceptance of brahmachari for life. Prabhupada's emphasizing. He had the good fortune. And Bhaktisiddhanta, from early stages of life, he was Naishtika brahmachari consciousness. It wasn't like aversion. It was his consciousness. And he manifested it in some persons anyway. So then there's stages for most people. Okay? Second question.
Also about those who are speaking yesterday, only promises potentially exacerbates rejection.
Yeah.
So we have these, so is it taking the baby steps, is that between?
Yes. And even the baby steps should be something that we know, like hopefully at the end of this evening, we'll ask everybody, establish some goal that will help you, either A or B, help yourself or help others, or both, overcome this negative emotion by taking a resource and then be accountable. So what will happen is many people won't do it at all, and then some people will do it and they'll be faltering, and some people will do it consistently. It's just life. Some people are lazy, some people are fence sitters, and some people they're really, they have a measurable goal, and they apply themselves. And those people that progress will be, a symptom of one of those three things. And then, of course, the spectrum. And then there's the intermittent, sometimes not, sometimes not. That's the anishtata bhakti. But that's just part of bhakti. There's the unsteady, and then gradually we would like people to come to the steady. And there's an obstacle to becoming steady, and that's stuff that's inside. So that's sadhana, therefore sadhana. We're just like trying to give a support structure to help the anartha nivritti happen with something that's doable, time-bound, a SMART goal, using modern terminology. And then, if you're not really serious about it, you won't do it anyways. Or intermittent. Or, become steady with something that's doable. And then celebrate. And then, okay, what's the next baby step, little step? Keep, because I want to reach that goal. And it's, your two questions are connected. And my determination isn't as strong as it could be, should be, would be. So I want it to become stronger. But that takes some purity of consciousness. I'm striving for that. That's a mode of goodness. Motive. And we're, the modes of nature are competing in us. You write with both hands. Are you left-handed or right-handed? Okay. Yes.
I'm full of families, I'm full of all of the committee members. I have a question. As an institution, do we have an official stand on this LGBTQ?
Yeah, you asked me this one. And I said, talk to Anutama.
Yeah, he said that we don't have an official.
We don't have an official. That's the press conference aspect of Anutama's personality. He has written something. Did he tell you that?
Yeah, I knew that.
Okay. But, there's, hey, woo, we don't want to create waves out here. So he hasn't published it. And it's on the liberal side. But we don't have an official. But, if you ask me, Premananda, here's my stand. This isn't the ISKCON stand. This is me. And you say what you want to say. Some of my best friends are in that category. Like, what's your position on, racial discrimination? Some of my best friends are black. We're not the body. That's our position. And somebody's wired that way. Okay, they're wired that way. I accept them. They're not that body. Now, just like this discussion at the college thing, it's not, that's one of the most time-bound recent ones, but it's, I'm at Rath Yatra in New York, and it's my turn as the organizer of the question and answer. But the first guy, standing up, leaning, body language was challenging. What's the Hare Krishna position on gay and lesbian people? And I'm from New York. And I said the same thing that I said to this lady. I said, our position is God has given everything with a purpose. We just need to be honest, recognize what the God-given purpose is, and follow that. And what's the God-given purpose? Just like I said earlier. So our position is we follow Krishna, and Krishna has given some purpose for everything. We follow that. And other than that, we don't do. We don't discriminate against this or that or the other thing. We just do what Krishna wants. And he said that was a good answer. He didn't have you people. That's our position. So if somebody is wired this way or wired that way, it can be wired this way and wired that way. We don't. The skin color, their socio-economic, this and that and the other. We don't. They're spirit soul. And they're wired this way, that way. If they're wired this way, that way, we accept. And now, how to deal with that? If you're black, you don't just pull the racial card and say, you're discriminating against me. Anyway, We're not. It's your spirit soul. Behave like that. And that means we accept Krishna's arrangement. I accept that I'm like this. I'm wired this way. And I accept you. You're wired this way. No problem. Now what do you do about that? We act according to Krishna's indication. That's what we do. Now he doesn't speak about that topic. It says that there's a purpose. And for sex, there's a purpose. It's take a soul, and that's the purpose. It's a God-given purpose. You follow that, it's spiritual. Don't follow that, not spiritual. We follow that spiritual path. That's our position. It depends on the person who you're dealing with, how you say that, but that's my position anyway. We follow what Krishna says.
So if in our community, someone really following the standard or following the regulated principles, we have, they should be able to do any service.
Sure.
Including altar service.
Well, provided they follow the standards. Supposing somebody's not wired that way. They're married, and they're not following the standards. Well, sorry. Come to the stage where you're following the standards. They can do any service. But follow, what Krishna says, however you're wired. Yeah. Got over that mountain.
There was a section that, a verse that was discussing the 4 divisions of Vanaprastha life.
4 divisions of?
Vanaprastha life.
Vanaprastha. Yeah, it's technical. I don't know what it means. You want to know what it means?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Also, Vanaprastha life, maybe looking ahead 15 years from now.
Keep it simple. And there's 2 standards that Prabhupada would often speak about. 1, Vanaprastha stage. With wife, go out of the home and visit places of pilgrimage for purification's sake. Not the comforts of home and not the this and the that's. Go out of the home and move away from the comforts and the attachments to the temporary and strive for purification. Another model that you didn't speak about so much, but it's common, and it is the husband in the relationship goes alone here and there, travels with a sannyasi or something or other, and then comes back home and spends time in the family, and then periodically goes out again. So I don't know if it follows one of these 4. I don't know. But if you want to find out more, there's not so much about it. Jayankur Sundar from Baltimore wrote an article, published it, because I got on his case. You're following it, but who knows what it is? You'll be an example, but write something about it. Form a little ministry, Vanaprastha ministry. Didn't do that, but he wrote something, published it, or gave it to Dandavats or something. I think there's one other besides his. Not a lot. Not a lot available for what's it look like? But there's principle. Those 2 are models. Anything else? Srila Prabhupada ki jai.